Somebody sent this to me today, and they said, "Papa God, can you take a look at this?" It's from Ronnie Radke. I think he's a musician. It also says he's like a convicted felon. I don't know if that's necessarily relevant. But okay. Not super educated on who he is, but he made this video here. We're gonna start off with this one though, from this individual.
Do you support Black Lives Matter?
Yes.
It says, oh, sorry. It says me being a Ronnie Radke fan for years.
Yes.
Do you support
Ronnie then looking at my account, calling me a girl, and saying he will never use they them pronouns.
LGBTQ?
Hold on, you're going too fast. You're going too fast. I'm asking you a serious question. You look like a girl. I can't see what it says. But you... Something about pronouns... it doesn't really make me transphobic. I don't know what they're saying because they decided to cut that out. Oh, it says, yeah, you look like a girl to me, so that makes me transphobic because I didn't say you look like a they. If you're a trans woman, I'll call you a woman. I ain't gonna walk around calling people they, them. Sorry. If you look female, I'm gonna call you one. Sue me. I don't know the context to this at all. I don't understand. But we're gonna go into that. So here you go. This person, I guess, says they, them, and their pronoun. All right.
Do you support Black Lives Matter?
So this is actually Ronnie Radke. He responds as a sandwich.
Yes.
Do you support...
All right, serious question. They, them is gender neutral, correct?
Sure, I guess.
Meaning not trans.
Okay.
Correct? They, them is not trans. It's gender neutral. You can't be trans if you're they, them, correct? Am I right? Someone tell me. Because if that's the case, then how does that make somebody transphobic if you don't call somebody they, them? That's
so,
not
like, gender neutral individuals would fall under the trans blanket.
trans, right? You're not. Sorry about being a cold cut sandwich.
And
If you don't call somebody they, them, that's not trans, right? You're not.
Okay, so someone in the comments said, just call people what they want to be called. Doesn't that just make it easier for everyone? You don't have to understand their reasoning. How the fuck am I supposed to know what they're called? That's why it's so insane. I'm not asking everybody I meet their pronouns. I'm assuming that what had happened as he referenced this person, not necessarily aware of their pronouns in their bio or something, and then we get into this thing. It doesn't seem like he read their bio. It seems more like, you know, that's where it comes from. Now, okay, we're obviously gonna get into like the depths of this. All right, so typically, generally speaking, people that use they, them pronouns fall under the transgender blanket. There's an entire blanket of people with varying intensities, right? So people who may just use different pronouns, they might identify as non-binary, or they may not even necessarily be non-binary, just using different pronouns. I don't even know if you'd consider that trans necessarily. I think there's a difference between using they, them pronouns and being non-binary. I'm going to get into it specifically. So I don't even know that you could say that somebody that uses they, them pronouns is actually non-binary or trans unless they identify as non-binary. I know we're going to get into the specifics. Ranging to somebody with like gender dysphoria. That's like, you know, male that identifies as male, female, a trans male, female, or even you could non-binary, like you can legitimately be non-binary with gender dysphoria. But here's the thing. I like to call it, usually I used to call it the transgender triangle because it kind of like rolls off the tongue, but it kind of is like I guess it's more like a gendered Christmas tree. Okay. And everybody effectively goes through this process. It's just easier or simpler for some people like myself. So you have at the stem here, it's your sex. You have your gender identity over here, your gender expression over here, and then your pronouns over here. Now, what does this mean? Okay. For Papa Gut, my sex is obviously male. Like, I'm a biological male. My gender identity is, I don't know if you can tell, is also male. I identify as a man. The way that I express myself to society is as a man, right? And that means that I dress in ways that our society will generally find it socially acceptable to dress as like a male. That's how I dress as a you know, there is like male and female type clothing. It is obviously different depending on the society that you go into. Like Scottish people wear dresses, men. Gay. But obviously clothing is a bit different. depending on the cultures, but it's about like what the cultural acceptance is for those things. And then my pronouns are going to be like he, him, or daddy, right? So we'll just say the he, him. Okay. Pretty simple. Here's the thing that I think that Ronnie Radke is getting at. It seems to be in the instance of meeting somebody like this individual. It's very bizarre and confusing to instantaneously assume that they are somebody that would identify as they, them. With that, I mean, if you obviously you can look in the bio. Again, I don't know the context of how they how they met and had a conversation. I don't quite understand. Oh, there seems to be a bit more here. Not really understanding the specifics. I don't think that's right. I don't really know. All these people look ridiculous.
I just
call me Mr. Pronouns from now on, guys. I'm honored that he looked at my account.
got called Mr. Pronouns and told I looked like a girl, but it was by Ronnie Radke, so I'm not actually mad.
I wonder what the context is. I don't understand this. This doesn't give me any context. Anyway, I'm going to assume it's within the context of like looking at somebody, assuming that they are a girl because they express themselves as a girl, and then getting kind of annoyed with it. I will say one thing, and this gets into like a kind of a deeper conversation. It does feel, and this isn't always the case, but I'm going to be honest with you, it does feel performative when somebody like this expresses themselves as a woman and is a biological woman, but uses they, them pronouns. And we don't know if they necessarily identify as non-binary, but let's say that they do. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to most people, right? It's somebody that their sex is obviously like a woman in this case, and they're expressing themselves as a woman, but then they identify as non-binary, and then they express them, so they use pronouns with like they, it's like they, them. It seems weird because when the question is, why do you feel non-binary then? What is the foundation for your feeling? And what ends up happening is then we get into a conversation about basically the impossibility to 100% determine these types of things. There's nothing objective that we can look at that says like, okay, somebody is non-binary or trans unless that individual has like has prescribed with gender dysphoria usually. So it gets into almost a trust thing. And so on surface value, it seems very bizarre somebody would be biologically a woman and express themselves as a woman, but then say that they don't identify as one and they have particular pronouns. Because it's like, what does that really mean to you? It's some people, I'm sure it's valid. But then other people, it's like, well, maybe they're doing it for attention. Honestly, I'm not trying to be rude. It's very possible this person is just doing it for attention. It's possible they're not, but then it's possible that they are doing it for attention. And we really just don't know. But it doesn't seem like it really necessarily means anything to them. Also, young people are experimenting with their, with their gender. Maybe that's all it is, and it's not necessarily super deep. It's more of just like, oh, this is cool, which is fine. But it feels yucky to compound this person that seems to just identify potentially and use different pronouns versus somebody who goes through a very authentic and distressful process of trying to transition and be passable in some capacity that is very mentally taxing and tolling, and almost in all cases very difficult to achieve the ideal expression of themselves, right? And so there are, like, I can understand the skepticism here. Now, at the end of the day, if somebody said like, hey, I identify as they, them, personally, I would just recommend you just validate their pronouns. Like, okay, they, them, that's fine. You don't need to have an individual conversation in every single situation of the depth of their gender identity. If someone says, can you please call me they or them, do that. Now, I would always do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean I might not be like, this is why. Like, in my own head, I just don't feel the need to question everybody's, gender identity or expression, unless the conversation, like from contextual standpoint, calls for it. So I guess that's the answer. Again, I don't know the full context of why this was even brought up. What was their interaction where he misgendered them? It might have just been a comment or something. But ultimately, it seems like they seem to be calling it transphobic. This hashtag transphobic, hashtag transphobia, non-binary. Okay, I guess they do identify as non-binary. But I will say one thing to end this off. They also have like the hashtag scene kid. They're dressed like an emo. In my experience, people who dress like this just in general, remove the gender part of it, are usually doing it for attention. I know that I'm sorry. Okay. And so it's not a huge stretch to say like, well, it's possible that they might be identifying for attention. I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying that it's skeptical. It's a lot of skepticism here. And again, I question why do you identify? What is it? Why do you identify? Okay. I don't quite understand. There doesn't seem to be a particular foundation. Now, one thing that is possible, though, is that somebody might be struggling with an external identity issue that they or someone else may misdiagnose, not necessarily the formal sense of like a doctor, but they misdiagnose as gender or like being non-binary or some form of dysphoria, right? Because I think that probably is a thing. I have a friend who's a detransitioner, and she thought, and they were a trans male, they're a cisgender woman now. She thought that she had gender dysphoria, and she went to the doctor and said, I think I have gender dysphoria. And then they were like, okay. And then they basically, they started to go through the process of her transitioning, right? Without necessarily any question. And, she had a different issue, something else going on, because there is an association with like things like anxiety, and being transgender for various reasons. Some of those could be the societal perception of themselves, versus other people, or rather, those could be like being diminished for their identity, or possibly that they're just underlying conditions and associations. So a lot of times people not always can get misdiagnosed, and I think that wraps into an entire conversation about how I don't think that we have honest conversations about detransitioners, mostly because transphobic people will point to detransitioners to invalidate the entire existence of trans people. And then people who are trans affirming will point at detransitioners and say like, that hurts our, the existence of people who may have been misdiagnosed, that hurts our narrative. And so like the reality is like detransitioners get wholly left out of the conversation in the correct contextual way. And the correct way to talk about detransitioning is really like, how can we look at detransitioners, listen to their experience so that we can avoid misdiagnosing some people as with gender dysphoria in the future, so that people generally have a more positive curve or a more positive outcome of being like taken care of correctly from a mental health perspective, right? It can make it easier and better for our prescription of people with gender dysphoria. And it could also make it easier and better for people who may not necessarily have gender dysphoria to be able to get properly treated. So hopefully that answers Ronnie Radke's question. Bada bing, bada boom. Or boomer. I'm a boomer. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and another special shout out to all my Patreon and Twitch subs. If you'd like to support this channel further than you already have by just watching the video alone, go down to the links below where you can sub on my Patreon, which will allow you to get your name on this beautiful black wall. Or you can go to the Twitch page and you can actually use a free Amazon Prime sub, if you have Amazon Prime, to subscribe. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.